Well, hello again everybody, and in today's video we're going to be unboxing a bandsaw which is made by Axminster, and for those playing along at home it's the AP1854BV. And because this is a BV version, it can cut wood, but it can also cut metal, and that's the main reason that I purchased it. It operates from a 230 volt supply and it weighs 73 kilograms, which I can vouch for, having dragged it up my gravel driveway. As you can see, the bandsaw did come delivered on this half-size pallet, and I've got to admit it really does weigh all of its 73 kilograms. So another reason for asking you to come along with me today is I'm going to need some help from you lifting it, so get some gloves and put your safety shoes on because this thing's heavy. Oh, well, okay, maybe that's the best way into it. We don't need to cut anything. I wasn't expecting that. Looks like I found some kind of dust extraction adapter here. Also got some nuts and bolts, perhaps for securing it onto a base. I mentioned earlier that this bandsaw is able to cut both wood and metal, and the thing that really enables it to do that is this, which is an inverter. So we've got a mains motor here. It's actually a three-phase motor, which is 230 volts, but it's a three-phase motor, not a single-phase motor. So what this inverter drive does, it actually converts our single-phase electrical supply into three-phase, which this motor understands. And what we can do is we can actually slow the machine down, because when you cut wood, you want the blade to be moving very quickly, but when you're cutting metal you have to slow the blade down by a huge amount. So this inverter allows us to speed up and slow down that blade. So I can see that the base of my bandsaw here, it's been secured to the wooden pallet via some screws here, so let's go ahead and remove all of those. Now I'm wondering if I've got any chance of lifting this on my own. And the answer is no. At 75 kilograms it's too heavy for me. Now I'm not sure, but I'm guessing that this has probably been manufactured in China and that Axminster probably put their badge on it or just specify it, but certainly the quality of this machine looks very, very good. You can see that it's got this very, very heavy and also rigid cast iron table, which is actually covered in smooth, so it's obviously got some anti-corrosion grease on it, because I'm guessing that given the weight of these are probably shipped from China on a ship, so everything's covered in lubricant and this corrosion resistant grease. So the first thing I'm going to do is spray some solvent all over this and get rid of it, because it makes everything really slippery. I'm not actually sure whether this thing comes pre-installed with a blade, so I guess we'll have to check that. Oh yeah, there's something ouchy in front there, so yes, it does look like it's come with a blade on it. Not sure whether it's a wood or a metal blade, so we'll have to take a look at that. The machine itself does come with a quite thick and comprehensive manual, which of course I'm not going to read. I think that my new bandsaw has been very well packed and it was fairly secure to the pallet. I'm guessing it probably is inspected by Axminster when it comes into the UK, but I have just noticed that there is quite a deep scratch here in the top of the unit, and I can see that somebody's attempted to touch it up. I'm afraid they haven't done a very good job of it. I know that in some of my other videos you've actually seen me using a bandsaw, and you're probably wondering why I bought another one. Well, there's a couple of reasons. Now, one of the reasons is because the new one here will cut metal, and I've got to admit I'm more interested in metalwork than I am woodwork. I am terrible at woodwork, as my wife would contest to, but I'm okay at metalwork. So I wanted a bandsaw that would cut metal, so we can cut up sheets of metal and things like that. So this is my old bandsaw, and you can see we've got some form of blade guide here. Now unfortunately it should have some rollers here which again guide the blade, but all that's broken away because this is made from some kind of zinc monkey metal. It's just no good. Now I've actually replaced this part about 3 times in the past, and every time I replace it, it just breaks again. I'm a bit sick of doing that, so yeah, it has to go. But from the old bandsaw I have salvaged this fairly heavyweight stand, and my old reciprocating saw here, which is designed to cut very heavy sections of steel, that's going to receive a motor upgrade from the old bandsaw. So although my old bandsaw may be dead, it certainly won't be forgotten. Go on, get out of there. Shoo! Shoo! Now my old Bandsaw, it's physically quite a lot larger than the new one, so this stand is actually a little bit oversized in that the base here, the hole centres aren't going to fit the new Bandsaw, and I think because the old Bandsaw was bigger, this stand is going to be a little bit low, so I'm probably going to have to build some form of spacer just to lift it up a little bit, but I'm not going to do that today, mainly because I don't have any material to actually build it, so I'm just going to balance it on the stand for now and give it a go. But the first thing that I need to do is, it's got these anti-vibration feet at each corner, so we've got to remove all of those. I think that now I've removed those bolts there, I think it will actually reduce some of the rigidity of this framework. It actually does feel fairly flimsy as it is right now, so I think I'm going to have to just put some bolts back just to tie each of these four corners together. Also notice that this old stand here, it is the green colour from the original Bandsaw, so I think we'll go ahead and we'll repaint that in the grey to match the new one. Pretty sturdy now. So the height of the table on the new Bandsaw, it's 330mm from the base, so that's going to put the top of the table about there. Well, that's too low for me because I am quite tall. I probably want it around elbow height, so we're going to have to build some kind of extension, maybe another 200mm, 250mm. So yeah, we're going to build some kind of box on here to raise the Bandsaw up by another 250mm. Well, you guys were pretty much no help getting this Bandsaw onto its stand, but with the aid of the wife, and after a lot of moaning, I finally managed to get it up, and after that was done with, she came into the garage and helped me lift the saw onto its stand. We've got a potentiometer control here, so this is actually going to be used to set the speed of the blade, how quickly the blade cuts. Now for hard materials, maybe like aluminium and steel, you want to be cutting at a very low speed, and for things like wood, we want to turn this up and be cutting at a high speed. We've got a green start button to switch the machine on, and we've got a red stop button to switch it off again, and I'm also guessing that this control will be a no voltage release. So if the machine is running and then the power gets disconnected for some reason, the machine will automatically turn it off, because if the power was to re-establish itself, you wouldn't want the machine to start running again unexpectedly, because you might have your hands inside it. So this is a very important feature that all types of saws and machinery should have them. They call it a no volt release. On the lower part of the machine here, you can see that we've got this on and off key switch, because we want to be able to control access to this machine. Obviously, if it can cut steel, it can cut fingers very easily, so when we're not using it, we can turn the machine off and take the key away to stop people tampering with it. There is some really high quality parts on this machine, and one of those parts is simply the hinges that are here on the door, and you can see that they're the types of hinges which you can actually lift up, so we can actually lift the whole door off if we want to get access internally. And talking of internals, let's have a look inside. Our cutting blade runs on two very substantial cast iron wheels, and I suspect that an awful lot of the weight within this machine is based on these cast iron wheels, because they are pretty thick section and heavy duty. They're also dynamically balanced, so in theory this machine should run with very little vibration. We can see at the back of the machine here we've got a safety switch, and this is an interlock so that the machine can't be operated if the door's open, so obviously we'll think of a way of defeating that at some point. But it isn't as simple as just jamming a piece of metal in, because these safety switches are actually kind of coded here, so you need this special shape of metal, so when you close the door this will engage inside of the switch and that will allow the machine to operate. But if you were to open the door, the machine will turn itself off. At the top of the machine here we've got a hand wheel, so we can use that to actually tighten the blade up, and it does that by raising or lowering this wheel here. You can see at the lower half of the machine we've got another very substantial cast iron drive wheel, and that's being driven here by a two-step pulley, so we've got a high and low speed. So again, for cutting wood you actually need it on the high speed, and for cutting metal you need it on the low speed, and I think the way it's actually been set at the moment, it is actually on the low speed. The other side of the machine here, we've actually got a brush here, so this is going to remove any sawdust or metal shavings from the blade to keep it clean. And then higher up here, you can see you've got a piece of plastic. Well, this is actually very tight fitting onto the blade, and again, that's what they call a scraper. So again, that's to remove any material off the blade, keep it clean. And talking of keeping the machine clean, we've got two dust extraction points where you can fit a vacuum cleaner to it. So we've got a lower dust extraction point here, and then on the front of the machine we've got another one. And the one on the front comes pre-fitted with a bung. So let's close up the machine now, because I'm getting ready to actually give this thing a run. And to actually close up the cabinet here, we've got these very heavyweight latches, and we've got one at the top of the machine and one at the bottom. I can see that our saw blade is actually supported by some very substantial roller bearings, and that's at the top of the machine and also underneath the table, and these two wheels are going to prevent any sideways movement on the blade. And we've also got a third roller bearing here, and this one sits at the back of the blade here, so when you're actually cutting something, obviously there's a tendency to try to push the blade back. Of course, you don't want to push it off those big cast iron wheels, so this is to stop the blade being pushed back and give it some support. And we can see that all three of the roller bearings here, they can all be very finely adjusted here with these screws. So we've got some thumb screws which are designed to actually lock these bearings in position. But if you do want to adjust them, you can achieve very fine adjustments just using these threaded adjustments here. Of course, when we're using a bandsaw, we never want our fingers to come in contact with the blade, so it's important that we try to cover as much of it up as possible. So again, the machine does come with an adjustable blade fence. So what we're going to do is let's lower that down, because we don't need to have so much of the blade exposed. And once we've lowered it, we can also just lock the fence in place here. When we looked inside the machine previously, we saw that the blade was sat on top of those large cast iron wheels. Now, it's important to keep the blade centred on those wheels. We don't want the blade slipping off at one side or the other. So we have a tramming control here to keep that blade centred, so that's what you do to adjust it. Now, if we do need to adjust where our blade is running on those cast iron wheels, the machine actually comes with a little window here, and I can actually see inside the machine. I can see that the blade is actually fairly well centred at the moment, but that certainly is a great safety feature, because it means that we don't have to try to open the door when we're setting up the tramming of the blade. Taking a look with our unsteady cam, we can see that the table itself comes on this adjustable mount, so we can actually tilt the table. So if we want to cut the material at 45 degrees or pretty much any other angle, we can do that, and it comes with a scale just to make that adjustment easier. We saw earlier the two pulley wheels for setting high and low speeds. Now, to actually adjust that pulley, you've got to take the tension off the drive belt, and the way you actually do that is you actually swivel the whole of the motor. So what you have to do is you just have to release this hand lever here, which allows the motor to be tilted and release the tension. Well, as you can probably imagine, I'm really itching to just give this machine a go. So I've got some thin plywood. That looks as though maybe it's about, I don't know, maybe just less than 10 mil. I've got some inch plywood, got some of that chipboard material that's got kind of the Formica stroke vinyl coating on it, and we've got a piece of wood I found on the wood pile, so let's just go ahead and measure that. It's pretty thick stuff, so that is 90 millimeters, or what's that in inches? So 3.4 inches. And also I've just got, again, a piece of wood off the wood pile, which is pretty knotty and horrible, and again, that's about 3 inches thick. Well, I think it's time to plug her in and see if it explodes. And another nice feature is we've got indication when the machine's powered up. And here we go. Well, the machine started, and the blade is actually running really slowly. I can actually see it turning. So let's try that speed adjustment. Well, I think our blade speed was a little bit low there, so we are going to have to go and put the machine into high gear. So let's just see if we can undo that. Okay, that should be on high speed now. I think I've got the belt on properly. So here we've got some inch plywood. Yeah, that cuts absolutely beautifully, lovely and straight. Now, because I haven't bothered to read the manual, I don't actually know what the maximum cutting capacity is for the machine, but I'm going to go ahead and try this 4-inch bark of timber, and I'm not exactly sure what this is, but it's kind of horrible kind of packing wood material, and it is a bit wet and damp. Let's see how the bandsaw gets on. Now, obviously it won't go in like that at the moment, so we're going to have to raise that blade up a little bit. Yeah, I think that'll probably do. Let's lock that up. Again, absolutely lovely cut. Let's try it lengthways with the grain. Absolutely beautiful finish on there. Finally, let's try our piece of rough forestry wood. And again, really nice cut. So I've got to admit, I think this bandsaw works beautifully. The machine comes with this really nice adjustable fence which is made from aluminium, and it looks like it's been precision ground, so we can move this around here. So we've got a handle to unlock it, then we can move it up and down, and it's also got a little micro adjustment lever here, so we tighten that one up and then we can adjust it very, very finely. Now, unfortunately, one thing that this machine doesn't come with is one of these adjustment angle fences. So the idea is you hold your piece of wood against it, you can set it at an angle, and then you slide it along here and you can produce really nice cuts. Now, this was an expensive machine and I don't think it really would have killed them to include one of these. This comes off another saw of mine and unfortunately it doesn't quite fit, so I'm guessing if I want one of these I'm going to have to purchase it separately, which is a shame. Now, I really did want to show this machine cutting some metal today, but unfortunately, as I said earlier, I didn't order the correct blade for it. So really, for cutting metal and hard materials, and in fact plastic as well, you want something with a lot of teeth, maybe something like 14 TPI. I don't have one, so we could only cut some wood. But as soon as I've gone ahead and I've purchased a metal cutting blade, we'll give the saw another run and you can see how it does. But I think for today, that'll do. Bye bye for now. Boom. Oh, me natches. Ow, ow, oh.